everyone, and welcome to a Planning for Success workshop. These workshops are designed to hopefully help you get set up for a new trimester, but also to support you throughout your academic journey. This is a series of 3 workshops. This is the 3rd of the series, and we have another one all about getting set up, talking about course profiles and what you should get out of those. We also have another one all about time management and planning, and this one will be all about effective study skills, which would be quite exciting. My name is Pauline. I am one of your boat mentors. You would have met me in the other 2 videos if you've seen those 2 videos already. I'm a mature age student, just for context, and it has been a long time since since I went back to university. So I had a 10-year gap between studies. So when I came in, again, I basically had to relearn how to be a student. How about you, Shay?
Yeah, I'm also a boat mentor, as you guys can see. I am a mature age student as well and have even previously started another degree. So definitely a very long learning journey, not a straightforward path, a bit of a windy one, but I've definitely picked up a lot of things in that time. So hopefully we can really put some of that into this workshop today, and you guys can walk away with something interesting. And we should probably mention the other lady on the slide, which is Jackie Wilkinson. She is both the student retention and pass coordinator. So she works within the sciences group and really makes sure that things are running behind the scenes and that students are supported in a variety of ways. So if you ever need to find her, if you look up her name on Griffith somewhere, it'll come up.
It'll come up. So, like we said before, this workshop will be all about the effective study skills, and there's a few, but we really picked the main 5 that we think would be really, really helpful as you're getting started for the new trimester specifically. But again, like we said before, hopefully throughout your academic journey as well. So first one, we're going to talk about spaced repetition. We're also going to talk about active recall. You'll hear more about this as we talk about them in detail later, so I won't spoil them now. We'll talk about primacy and recency effects, and basically how you should time when you're doing your task, and how you should kind of distribute your task in a day. Long-term memory as well we will touch on, as well as
how can you maximize that?
How can you actually maximize long-term memory, but self-care and why that is important as a study skill, which is quite interesting.
They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really think about it.
And I think we're going to open up with an activity with Shay.
So you're going to have to stick with me with this one. I'm trying to prove a point. So I'm going to be getting you guys to do this in your own head. I mean, this is a video, so we can't really interact too much. But what I'm going to get you to start with is I want you to recite in your head the last 5 letters of the alphabet. So that's Z, Y, X, W, V.
So backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh God.
I'll do it too. Okay. And now I want you to remember these 5 words on the other side. So heart, elephant, Budapest, calcium, and xylophone. So repeat those in your head just for a second. Alright, hopefully we're all there. So next, now I want you to calculate 27 times 5 in your head.
Oh
so
no, there's math.
I'll give us an extra moment for this one. So hopefully you're still following along. 27 times 5. All right,
it's a real moment.
Yeah, I think I'm there. But this is obviously math isn't my strong suit, but hopefully we're there. Hopefully we've got some sort of number. Now, this is the fun part. Can you write those 5 words in reverse order?
Oh, the words.
Yeah, I'll give you a moment to dig in your brain and really think, what were those 5 words? I remember elephant.
I only remember xylophone because it was the biggest word there. That's
Budapest. I think that one was in the middle.
Somewhere. Calcium was there.
So, I don't know whether it's just us and we're struggling a little bit with this, but
memory is short.
Yeah, most people will find that it is not an easy task to go back and remember those 5 words now. What were the specific order that they were in? And are you getting them in the right order? Are they actually in reverse? Do you remember all the words? I don't know. I didn't. I wouldn't have remembered it without Pauline here.
No.
So what we're really trying to emphasize with this activity is that cramming is really not an effective study skill.
Yeah.
Trying to pack your short-term memory with as much information as possible is not going to be effective in one, recalling the information accurately, but 2, doing it with some sort of ease. It is not easy. It's almost like it's all in there in a mush.
Yeah.
And that's really a big hurdle to try and take that information out and reorganize it how we want it, which is 5 words in reverse order. So
and that's just recall. Like, what if you have to synthesize that information and like actually apply it and think about how to? I know I could not. That would be a big ask for me.
Yeah, and
especially
I don't know how many times we have done this activity and we still struggle to recall those words because they never really pushed into our long-term memory. We're just here cramming, shoving all that information in, and in 2 weeks do I remember it?
Absolutely not.
Definitely
not.
So this is where we're going to try and emphasize some of these things like spaced repetition. So as opposed to the night before an exam or the night before an assignment's due, really trying to cram all that information in and make things happen overnight, probably a big no-no. It's not going to work in the long term. And you know, you're studying a degree because you want to actually, well, hopefully you want to actually retain this information throughout your years in the degree so that you can develop a deeper knowledge and understanding of the course that you're doing. So this is when we really look at the typical forgetting curve. So spaced repetition, it's kind of like when you're in primary school and you were told to practice the recorder.
Oh, yeah. Musical instruments are the best. It's spaced repetition.
100%. That same idea of practicing 1 hour every day is going to be much more effective than doing 6 hours on a single day in terms of what you can recall and what you become proficient in. So you can see on the the forgetting curve that we have up on the screen that the first time you learn something, within a single day, you forget already 20% of what you've learned. And that's a pretty significant amount. That's a fifth of what you learned. So already dropped out of your head. But the idea is that as you start to forget, you come back in and you reinforce that information. And every time that you do that, you lengthen that forgetting curve. So the second time that you come in and review the content, so that first day you've dropped 20%, you come in and review again, and now it's going to take 2 days to get back to that same place of forgetting 20%. So you've already extended how long that information sticks with you. And you'll see it with your lecturers, you know, they get up and they just talk about these things like it's basic knowledge somehow. And it's because they're constantly reinforcing this knowledge. And that's something that we can employ as students throughout the entire trimester, is making sure that what we learned in week 1, we touch on again at some point, that we come back and we re-engage with this information to really reinforce it. And even then, that once you've moved forward, you can really anchor this information with the other information you've built on with it. So spaced repetition is probably one of the most effective ways for retaining content in the long term. It's just about the effort, putting it in.
Yeah, it is effort to begin with, but basically it also introduced the idea that revision does not start at the exam block. So the study period is not when we start revision. We actually start revision pretty much the day after we learn the topic. That is the most optimal way to start revising it, and then from then you space it out. So hopefully you can try this out for a trimester. See what that feels like for you. See if it helps your grades. That would be really interesting.
So just however you can fit it in, just making sure to come back. It's not easy, and there's a forgetting curve to kind of give you an idea of what's really the optimum times for reviewing content, but things get busy, so it's making it work for you. Coming back and reviewing it more than once or twice or 3 times within a trimester will already put you 10 steps ahead of where you were before if you were just learning it week 1 and revising it in week 12. So give it a go, see how it works.
And then to go hand in hand with spaced repetition, I mean, these two techniques, I think really does make a difference when it comes to assessment season. But the other one is active recall, and as the name suggests, it is about actively recalling or retrieving information from your memory. So not just passively reading, or not just passively listening to a lecture or passively taking down notes. It's making those processes really active or incorporating other active techniques into your learning repertoire, basically. So a really, really good example would be flashcards. That's obviously when you have a prompt question on one side and then the answer on the other side. But obviously you read the prompt question first and then you try to retrieve that information, as opposed to just going, okay, this is the keyword, I'm just going to look at the answer. So it's uncomfortable, but the more we make our brain uncomfortable to begin with, the easier it is for us to actually retrieve information in the long run. And obviously the more easier it will be for us come exam time as well, right? So like exam time is really, really stressful. So if you were uncomfortable already, like throughout the trimester, come exam time, it is less stressful, and you are hopefully more used to retrieving that information. That way you can actually synthesize your questions and actually answer with depth as well. That would be quite good. A few techniques as well would be mind mapping. Mind mapping is really, really cool.
It's really good for just, especially, you know, we learn a lot of stuff in our degrees, and a lot of the courses really start to intertwine. And doing mind maps is a really great way to incorporate a lot of information.
And I think that takes practice as well. I think the first time you mind map, it's really you want to look at your notes to put them in a mind map, but the idea is that you don't. So you don't look at your notes at all. You only mind map what you know on top of your brain, and then you fill in the blanks later on. So I usually mind map with a black pen. And then afterwards, I look at my notes and then fill that in with red pen and go, this is the ones that I forgot. That way, next time, I was aware that I forgot those things, and actually they end up sticking to my brain a bit more.
I can already see it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I would have just imagined the ones in a different color.
Exactly. Summaries are a really, really good one as well. That's actively making summaries of your notes, your lectures, or whatever other information you've collated throughout that research for a topic. Reviewing your lectures, obviously beforehand and afterwards as well, but doing that actively. So actually listening for keywords, for key informations, thinking, okay, you know what, he said this, what's the proof of that, or how can I expand on that a bit more. So basically this whole idea is based to keep engaged with the learning process and make it as active as possible. We'll talk about this a bit more. There's a few example slides
100%.
going
Just,
as well.
What's your favorite one?
So
what's your
my
go-to
one is
on
mind maps, and also the way I take notes. So I like the way I take notes. I usually create prompt questions as opposed to the topic headings. That way I'm actually testing myself as I am going through my notes.
That's super effective.
Yeah, there's an example of that later.
I love flow charts. I think very linearly. I think, and so writing things down in an order, even if they're not necessarily things that you would typically describe in an order, it's just the way I think. And sometimes numbering them and putting them down in a list, or even breaking them down into subs, 1A, 1B, and then 2, that really helps my understanding. So that's always my favorite. And I think everyone loves practice questions.
Oh yeah, workshop practice questions are the best. I mean, they already have the content or the focus that your lecturers kind of want you to focus on.
Yeah, they've gone out of their way and have curated questions that they believe are going to emphasize important topics.
But if you don't have workshop questions available, I know I've had courses where there were no workshop questions. What I usually recommend doing is finding a group of friends and then creating a question sheet each, and then exchanging that with each other.
That's really smart.
All of the practice questions, right? And then you really don't know the answer yourself. They know the answer, but you guys have to talk through it.
This kind of reminds me of a little bit of past.
Is it kind of
maybe
like past?
So yeah, there's a plethora. There are so many different ways that you can really emphasize and incorporate active recall into your studies. And I think we'd kind of mentioned flashcards, so we really wanted to put up some actual examples of what do our flashcards even look like and how do we do them. So If you watched our previous video on scheduling, you'll see that I'm definitely a paper-based girl. I love having everything physically in front of me. And I would also like to emphasize that there has been research that shows that things that are written down on paper or put in front of you physically are retained a lot easier in your brain, just because of the physical component of it as well.
Well,
so
you're actually writing it.
Yeah,
that is like more brain connections.
You also have an awareness of the spatial, of like what pages it was on. So there is a lot of great things about having things on paper. They're not always convenient, but there are definitely some pros to it. And I've got an example up there for, I think that was human physiology or something, where I needed to recall certain equilibrium potential values. So I've just got the prompt on the front and the answers on the back. And I would look at the front and I've got exactly what ions I want to look at, and I have to recall all the information about them. So not easy, but definitely worth giving it a go and really trying to challenge yourself to recall difficult and I guess really nitty-gritty information as well. Like sometimes I start talking about things that aren't even listed on there because I just want to splurt out everything that's in my brain. And then we also have an example, which are Pauline's ones, which are both on Quizlet. I think that you've got the Quizlet examples up there.
Yes, so Quizlet is fantastic because one is really convenient to make it on your desktop or on your phone, and then you can flick through that as you're waiting in line for coffee maybe.
And it's free.
And it's free as well. Not only that, there's actually a few decks already available from students who've maybe done the course or a similar course previously. So if you're always short on time and you can't quite make a deck yourself, you can always look at other people's one, making sure obviously that we stay engaged and make sure they're actually correct. They're actually correct
that's another way to reinforce your knowledge is, are you going through them and you're going, wait, that answer's not quite right.
That's not it. And Anki is fantastic. Have you tried Anki before?
I have, but as I said, I'm a paper girl. I gave it a go. And I think the thing I really love about Anki that I can't get in my physical flashcards is that they have algorithms in terms of...
It's so good.
And it is based exactly around that spaced repetition that we talk about. And that's something that if you're using Anki, it's going to be really effective for remembering a large amount of information that a lot of the time is rote learnt. So something where you're not thinking of, you're just memorizing it. It's a name. This means that. Yeah,
and unfortunately, some courses requires you to just memorize things so that you can actually apply them eventually.
Yeah, 100%, and that's definitely common in foundational courses. So, flashcards are super effective just for kind of getting your brain to start to remember these words so that they become just common knowledge. But it's a big learning. It's a big hurdle at the start. So flashcards are super effective for that.
I think from me as well, obviously I use a lot of active recall in my study habits basically. One thing that I like to do is keep engaged with the actual distribution of topics in the course. So I actually associate a topic with a lecture, with a workshop, with an assessment, so that I know when I'm going into a lecture or when I'm going into a workshop, what topics are actually going to be covered in that workshop already, and then they're all collated in the one space. That's just a systematic way of thinking about the course for me anyway, and because I use a specific app, I use Notion, which we talk about in the planning video as well. I use that for my notes as well, not just for planning, and it just kind of helps me organize my courses. Another thing I like to do is, like I mentioned previously, I remain engaged with a note-taking process. So instead of having a topic and then the actual notes, so like instead of having a heading, notes, subheading, notes, I usually like to do questions instead. So it is a bit more time-consuming, and it's definitely not easy. It's a habit that I had to build over a long period of time because it does take a long time. But it has gotten easier now that I've had a lot more practice with it. But basically, again, within Notion, as you can tell, I use it quite a lot. You can have a toggle feature where you hide things under a toggle. So all of my notes are hidden under toggles, and you can only see questions. So before I can open that toggle, I have to read that question, try to answer it, I open the toggle, see the notes. If it's correct, it's correct. If it's not, it's not. But that is really an active way of me reviewing through notes. Also an active way of taking notes. And again, we'll talk about the Cornell method later on, which is a way of applying these principles, not a notion, but on a plain piece of paper. Really fantastic. That's how I used to take my notes as well. And I also just had a little thing on the slides about workshop questions, and again we touched on this a bit before.
Can't emphasize them enough. There's not many times especially as you progress further into a degree, where you get workshop questions all the time. So making the most of them in those early years and those courses that do have them is going to be so worthwhile.
And if you ever find them too easy, if you ever finish a workshop and go, okay, that was really, really easy, like that took me 10 minutes, like challenge yourself to kind of give more detail as to what the question. Further. Yeah, take it really further. I used to do that. If I find a question too easy, if I'm like, oh, there's only one mark, but it's an easy one, I'd go, I want to know more about that topic anyway. If I'm thinking as a lecturer, what exam questions.
That's a really big thing as well. Is trying to think about what could they ask me? That's exactly how you kind of take your notes and make those questions. And it's like, you're not going to be surprised by short answer questions if you've already gone in and have thought throughout the entire course, how can this be turned into a question?
And then maybe you won't be surprised come exam time because you actually had the same wavelength as your professor, and it's all there. And you're like, oh, I thought of
They just stole your exam questions.
Stole your idea. All right. And then finally, like we said before, we have the Cornell method, and this is another way of taking notes. A really, really fantastic way, actually, because again, it relies on the idea of active recall, where we pose our headings as questions. This is just on a plain piece of paper as opposed to an app. So on your left margin, you have a column for questions. And then on the right side, that's where you put the majority of your notes. And then on the bottom is actually a little summary in your own words of what was happening in that page or in that topic if it goes for more than 2 pages. So the idea is that when you're reviewing it, you cover the right-hand side, you cover the notes section, you look at the left column first and go through the questions, try to answer them, and then you uncover the notes section and see whether you got it right. Really cool as well. Some tips around that would be to actually leave some spaces for when you're retrieving more information later. So usually when you're in a lecture, things are going really quickly and you're taking notes and you don't actually understand some of the things. I know I definitely don't understand everything 100%. On a lecture, and I have to Google things later. Leave some spaces for that. And then obviously try to color code as well. Like we love using colors and our notes, especially when I was still doing handwritten notes, I'd usually leave things, well, one, I would have diagrams in colors, but also red pen for important things, some blue for some labeling.
And it depends what you do. So sometimes if I'm highlighting in a particular course, a particular lecture, I will decide, okay, well, the most key statements are going to be highlighted in yellow. Any measurements are going to be highlighted in green, and I kind of just make it key at the start of the notes of what each highlighter means. So whatever works for you, however you want to incorporate any sort of way where it's really just engaging with the content and really trying to think, what does this mean? What is this? How would I categorize this?
And within that line, I think it's really important that we don't just take notes verbatim from what is getting said in a lecture or what is on textbook. You really kind of have to rephrase that even. So
digest it just a little bit.
Like make it in a way that write it in a way that you would understand later when you're reviewing your notes, because sometimes I've written things from the lectures and I'm going, what did that mean?
Yeah, that's where that, or as much detail as possible is really going to be useful coming back and reading things, diagrams, definitions, whatever it is that may trip you up.
And then finally, actually no, not finally, but kind of within this 3 main things, is the idea of a primacy and recency effect. So basically in a day we have our prime times and then we have our down times. And when we're thinking about how we're going to distribute tasks in a day, we have to be smart about what tasks we're going to do in our prime time and what tasks we're going to do in our downtime. So I'm a morning person. My prime time is really, really early in the morning. So that's when I do all of my heavy thinking tasks. So for example, if I have to do a workshop question, if I have to watch a lecture for the first time, or I actually have to be engaged to get that content into my head, I would watch that on my prime time. If I am doing something, for example, if I'm watching a lecture for the second time, for example, I didn't get all the information I wanted the first time, and I'm just rewatching it, maybe I would do that on my downtime. If I'm writing an email, maybe I would do that on my downtime. Considering it's an important one.
Kind of lower capacity.
Definitely.
I definitely use my downtime to start collating my to-do list and
Yeah,
start
that's a
thinking
good
about
one.
things where I'm not processing information,
Yeah.
but I'm just moving it around.
Yeah.
Those type of tasks are usually useful there.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that maybe we have more than one prime time as well in a day. I know, so I usually peak at 7 a.m. and then I kind of dwindle down by 12. No work done again until maybe 3 till 5. Yeah. That's usually how I would do it. Yeah.
And it really depends on you. I definitely love a good early morning as well.
Yeah.
As soon as I wake up, I feel ready to actually take in information, and then hit 2 o'clock, I'm ready for a nap.
Yeah.
And then for some reason hit back 8 o'clock at night, I'm ready to take in some more information.
She's a night person.
Yeah, so it's just thinking about when you're sitting down and studying sometimes, do you feel like you're actually taking in information? If you don't, if you feel like you're just running over it again and again and again and it's not sinking in, it may be because you're in a bit of a downtime and it's not the most effective time for you to study. So we talked about earlier about how you can actually maximize long term. So we don't just want to have all this information sitting in our long-term memory for an extended period of time where we're just trying to constantly retain it in short term. We want to shift it over into our long term so that eventually we're just recalling it. It's already in there, we just need to find it. So we've just got up a bunch of different things that can really start to emphasize that long-term memory, and we already know that you should watch your lectures, you should read the textbook and what's contained in there, and using those techniques we talked about, so spaced repetition and active recall and all those ways where you can engage with information and digest it a little bit, those need to be incorporated in pretty much all of these ways. So
in a long period of time.
Yeah, definitely. So reviewing your learning objectives and lecture notes, those are going to be really key. And the learning objectives, if they're not in your lectures, you usually have learning activities within your course profile, which should hopefully also be able to spark that recalling, what have I done, what do I need to do, and how am I going to go about it. Another one is, so now you've got your learning objectives, and kind of like how Pauline studies where she turns things into questions, you can easily turn a learning objective into a question. I think that's how a lot of us really do start to make flashcards, is going in, okay, if I should know how to explain what a mitochondria is, I'm going to write a flashcard, what is a mitochondria? So that can easily be converted over into flashcards or mind maps or whatever it will be. Another thing is attempting workshop questions. We will continue to reiterate it because not doing them is really letting yourself down in a way. You're missing out on an opportunity to engage with the information and digest it and retain it in the long term.
And if possible, do them before the workshop.
100%.
I think I've definitely come into a workshop not having done the workshop questions before, and it's really, really different.
You're constantly trying to one, understand information and to retain it at the same time.
Where areas when you've answered them and you're in the workshop, you can actually think about what the lecturer or what your tutor is saying, and it's like more depth of information in your head.
I definitely, when I come into workshops, so when I've attempted the questions beforehand, if there are really difficult ones that I don't feel like I have the knowledge for or I can't accurately answer them, I try and do my own research or finding information and trying to do that. If I still have no idea, I try and write down whatever I have on my mind at the time. And as I go into the workshop, you know, I write in a different pen whatever notes I'm taking within the actual workshop, what we talk about. And at that point, I'm ready to take in that information. I have these missing connections and they're providing that information. So that's one really great way to make sure that the information's going to stick. And another one that I talked about earlier that I really love as a pass leader myself, I cannot emphasize pass enough. It is such an effective way to study, not just in how well you will retain the information, but also how much time it's going to take you. So you come to pass, it's less than an hour now, it's a 50-minute session. And in that 50 minutes, you're going to do basically the equivalent of 4 hours of personal study. So when you think about that, if you're going to each course that has a pass session, if you go to one for each of them, 4 courses, whatever, you're going to save, 16 take 4. You're going to save like 12 hours, 10 hours of actual personal study. That's a lot of time to free up in a week, you know? So really being smart and making the most of these programs and these resources that are available. Another really big one, so we've mentioned flashcards and using that as a testing tool, doing practice questions, really challenging yourself to recall the content without looking directly at your notes, without being stimulated by diagrams or something like that. You really want to be able to dig in there and put down as much as you want. And I think alongside with active recall, there are a few different types of recall that you can engage in. There's free recall, where if I said, okay, mitochondria, write down everything you know about a mitochondria. That's free recall. And that's another type of recall where you're really just going in and going, okay, I'm not organizing the information. I'm just writing down, okay, it's in a cell. It makes energy. It's the powerhouse, you know? And that's one way to do recall. And you can take it further and start doing things like cued recall, where you may have a prompt question. So that's very similar to flashcards, where what is this, and or how many things of this, and you've got a cue, and now you need to retain information specific to that question. So really, recall is the biggest one here. I don't think we can emphasize it enough, is making sure that you're trying to pull that information out without immediately looking at notes and lecture slides. And as always, repeating it again.
More than once.
And again. Spaced repetition, so don't just repeat it all in a day. You're going to need to come back to that flashcard in a couple of days, in a week, in 2 weeks. And it's not necessarily about completely digesting all the information again. Hopefully the first time you come in contact with it and you really do start to break it down, you've set yourself up in a position where it's not going to be incredibly time consuming to review. It's a setup. There's a bit of a setup cost going in, but the payoff.
Just like when you're going through your notes the first time and you're trying to make a summary, the first time you do it, you think everything should be in that summary because everything seems important because nothing's in your brain, right? Like you're like, oh my God, I won't remember all this, so I have to summarize all of this. Whereas later on, when you've actually disseminated the information and it's more information is in your brain, that summary gets shorter and shorter to the point where sometimes I really only have a paragraph for a whole module. And that's fantastic because that means a lot of the information is now on my brain. I only have the really, really key things that I think I should remember. So repeating it more than once is really, really important. How many times do you repeat your revision cycle? Usually for me, 4 to 5 times per topic I repeat, and then that's usually sorted. My retention's pretty good.
I would say at least once every 2 weeks I'm engaging with the information in some way, shape or form. Whether that's, you know, I'm doing another topic and I'm going, wait, this is building on something I've already done. I don't quite remember it. And then going back and looking at the flashcards I made, or looking at the mind map and engaging back with that information and adding in what I know now. So it looks in different ways and in different forms of how you incorporate it. It's not always flashcards, but it's more about constantly coming back to that information, making sure you're strengthening those connections within your brain. And we did talk about as well, self-care is an important part of a study skill, of all study skills. As human beings, we are not going to function at our optimum levels if we're not taken care of in all aspects. So that includes eating well and exercising. Those are 2 really key ones that you can hopefully employ easily. Is just making sure you're eating a range of different foods, things you've heard throughout probably your entire life, things that will be helpful, but it's important to still emphasize them here in this world of study skills. And another really important one is socializing. So if we lock ourselves in a room and just study all trimester, it's going to be a very difficult and challenging trimester. Humans, we need to socialize. It's just part of our makeup and how we are. And maintaining those social connections and being able to offload and talk about things other than uni are going to hopefully fill your cup up and bring you back with a bit more motivation and you feel a bit more fulfilled in all aspects of your life. And of course, we don't just come into a degree, hopefully, just to look at these tiny little topics. We take the chance to really broaden your horizons and try new things. And I've definitely, even though I study a Bachelor of Biomedical Science, all my electives are within law and government and politics, and that's also another interest of mine, and I really try not to neglect those type of things while I'm here at uni, because that also really puts a bit of fire in me and makes me excited to learn about other things as well.
I think just as a tack on as well on the looking after yourself bit, really an emphasis on how important sleep actually is.
Consolidation.
So when we sleep, that's actually when we consolidate short-term memory into long-term memory. That's when you form those connections into long-term memory. So by sleeping, you are effectively studying. It's actually such a contradiction. You're like, no, I can't sleep because I have to study. No, if you don't sleep, you don't actually form those connections.
And so you could spend the entire day studying. If you go home and cram in 4 hours of sleep, you probably have wasted a lot of that study time because it didn't have all the time to convert into your long-term memory. Exactly.
So over your trimester, hopefully you can maintain a really good sleeping schedule, and hopefully that will help make you feel better as well come exam season. Exam season is really important. A lot of people tend to not sleep during exam block,
and that's
I
when you
understand
need it the most.
Yeah, I really, really do understand it. There's like a drive to learn as much content as possible, but hopefully by revising or by reviewing things earlier on in a trimester, you really save yourself come exam time, and you are actually able to rest and take care of yourself come exam period.
So that's definitely a big thing on scheduling. So if you haven't watched our second video, that is all about scheduling, and we talk about also making time to incorporate rest, family activities, sleep, socializing. So definitely check that one out if you're not sure how to even make it work alongside uni.
Definitely.
And this is just a really big, it looks like a big weird web of information, but if you really zoom in on each of these different sections, start to ask yourself, am I doing this? Are these things that I'm already employing in my life, in my studies? Or are these things that I can kind of start looking at, well, I don't do that, so what's the worst if I give it a try? So even supplementing lectures and workshops with extra material, going out and watching YouTube videos about content. So there are some really amazing YouTubers out there who create content and reliable content as well.
I was going to say, just be aware that you are looking at content that are reliable. I suppose
you've got to have a critical eye coming in.
Exactly. That's a good test as well, like being critical of the information going in.
So there's lots and lots up there. We talked about, are you going to past sessions? Are you, I think a really important one that is not often emphasized in the learning process is self-evaluation and thinking, how do I feel about this? Do I feel confident? Am I progressing well? Am I leaving some things behind? Really thinking about how you're traveling and whether there's still room for improvement and things that you could be doing as well.
But I think being aware, so developing that metacognition as well, actually reinforce, again, memory.
Thinking about thinking.
So thinking about thinking, or like knowing what you don't know makes you remember that more. It's actually quite amazing. Lots of research on it if you guys want to read up on metacognition and how that affects memory. But really fantastic way of really cementing your memory. Is to actually be aware of what you're remembering, what you're retaining, and what you're not retaining.
It's all that higher order thinking. The higher you think about information, the more your brain wants to retain it. It's like, this is so important, I can't let it go.
Exactly.
So those are really important there as well.
Some useful study resources as well based on what we talked about during this entire video. Notion is the app that I use. If you guys want to check it out, it is completely free for students, which is awesome. It's unlimited access. You also have Anki. So Anki, I believe, is free for the web, and it's paid on the phone app, but completely free on the web. Quizlet is completely free. Fantastic. Ali Abdal is a YouTuber who talks all about studying strategies, and he is fantastic. And I think I actually, when I was doing a lot of my research on how to study, like I said before, I was a mature age student, didn't know how to study when I came in. I was watching Ali for ages, and really that's how I got a lot of my learning strategies.
Sometimes it's a lot of information we don't even know where to start. So watching someone who's already digested that information and presents it in an interesting and intriguing way, it's already a good start.
But making sure that you do your own research yourself as well. Don't just take other people's word into account. Yeah, that's a really good one. But also the Cornell method. So if you guys want to read up more about the Cornell method and the research behind it, why it actually works, and how to structure it to be more effective, you can click on that link as well.
And then just to talk, continuing with all these resources, these are ones that are available within Griffith. So we've talked about past sessions and how they can be effective in studying, but we also have things like the Griffith mentors, and they're going to be able to help with things like structuring, written work and referencing, researching, all those things that are involved in writing and creating assignments and stuff like that. They're great to get some feedback. We also have the Back on Academic Track program, which is us guys. And we're always happy to talk to you and hopefully point you in the right direction, offer some advice, and really make sure that you're able to access all those wonderful resources and programs at Griffith University. And lastly, if you're not having all your questions answered by those three, definitely check out student support. So that's all aspects of supporting your life here at university, financially, health and well-being, everything. That's all incorporated under student support. So they're always there, and that entire website, that page, has so much information. It is like a big centralized version of all the links and things that you could possibly need here. And then going beyond that, you're feeling pretty good. You want to know, okay, how can I go even further? How can I really succeed here at university? The Student Success Guide is a really good, it's quite a short little booklet. It's nothing huge, but it's got some really key things in there that will really retain you throughout your degree and help you keep engaged throughout the entire thing as well. We talked about this quite in depth in the other two videos, but I just wanted to make sure I put it in case you don't watch those ones, talking about withdrawal due to special circumstances. So this is an application that you can make if, say, something happens in a trimester and things kind of get out of control after census day, and it really impacts your studies, your grades, everything that really comes into that. This is an application that you can put in, so you didn't get to withdraw before census date, but you know that something impacted you, and had it happened before census date, you would have withdrawn. So this is an application you can put in, and hopefully, if it is successful, what will happen is on your academic transcript, whatever grade or fail, 1, 2, 3, whatever it was, will be converted over to a withdrawal. And this usually means that your GPA is boosted immediately, which for most people is super motivating and can really help push you back into your degree and feel like, you know what, it's not all hopeless. But at the end of the day, even if you put in an application and you're not too sure, best case scenario is it gets approved. Worst case scenario is you are where you are. And that's not the end of the world here. There are a million options, and not having an absolute perfect 7 GPA isn't the end of the world here. You can still graduate if you meet your program requirements. So these are things to keep in mind, and not to get completely discouraged by mistakes. They do happen. It's how we tackle them. It's how we move forward. So this is always an option, and you can apply within 1 year, up to 1 year from that census day where things occurred.
And finally, we like to leave all of these videos with a little checklist, things that maybe you can start having a look at so that you are prepared for a new trimester. So check your course profile, check when the assessments are, check what your learning activities are each week. We have a full video talking about course profiles and what you actually need to get out of that hefty document. That's video number 1 in this series, in case you guys haven't seen it. Know when your workshops and lectures are, And in addition to that, know when your labs are, if you also have labs, and use a planner to kind of help you plan your week so that you know times when you're meant to be online, times when you're meant to be on campus. Plan when you're going to do your assessments and set alarms for your due dates. So know when or how you're going to tackle an assessment, especially if it's a really, really big one. We talk all about assessment planning as well on the previous video number 2 of this series. It really covered everything. And setting an alarm for important quizzes, for submission time for reports, exam time, obviously really, really important. And then again, setting a reminder for census dates. So trimester 1, 2021, where we're in now, your trimester census date is April 4, 2021. However, if you're watching this at another trimester or even another year, just check your academic calendar. It's usually the one highlighted in blue or another color, but you can't miss it. And I think that is everything. That's everything that we kind of want to share with everyone today.
Hopefully you guys got something out of it. I'll keep that checklist up for you to read. If you have any more questions, we're always around. If you search up the boat Griffith on Google, we'll be the first ones to come up, and you can always get in contact with us there. We're always happy to help and point you in the right direction. So hopefully you got something out of this. If you haven't watched the other videos, definitely give it a go. But that's it from us. Thanks for watching.
Thank you
guys.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.